Hey, what's up you guys? Today I thought we would take a look at the first 100 books I have read since I joined booktube. So a quick history lesson, I only started really reading again in January 2019 after not really reading since like 2014 other than for school. And I uploaded my same YouTube video and my first YouTube video, and that's very same month I done my first wrap up. And since then I have read just about 100 books. I've read a lot bit more now, but I thought it would be fun to kind of look at the different patterns and like charts and see what I've read a lot of, what I've not read a lot of, where I can improve, where I can maybe read less. We'll just have to find out. So if you enjoy this video, please leave a like, please subscribe, and let's just get straight into the stats. So I'm going to be looking down at my laptop quite a lot during this video. I do apologise, I hate doing that in videos, but obviously I can't remember all this on the top of my head. So the very first book that I read in January 2019 was The Catcher in the Rye, and the very last book, or book 100, was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So, you know, started with a classic and ended with a brand new release in 2019, and we'll also talk about that. So the highest rated book that I have read was Heartstopper Volume 1, and this has 4.55 stars on Goodreads as an average. And the lowest I read was Stancliffe's Hotel by Charlotte Bronte, and that has 2.7 stars. And honestly, I can see why that doesn't have that many stars. If you're not a big Bronte fan and you read it, you probably think it's absolutely rubbish. I am a big Bronte fan, and even I struggle to get through it. It's definitely not one I could recommend just for reading for fun. It's just kind of like a interesting history into like the Bronte sisters, like early writing and their early life. Heartstopper, I'm not surprised this is the highest rated, but also at the same time I feel like it's only that high because, I don't know, maybe people don't want to be called homophobic for giving it bad reviews. It definitely is a good book, but I don't think it deserves to be the highest rated out of every book that I have read. That seems a bit extreme to me. So the longest book that I have read is Breaking Dawn by Stephanie Meyer with 756 pages, and despite the length, I absolutely flew through that. I read it in like 2 days, maybe 3 days. And the shortest book is also Stancliffe's Hotel with 79 pages, and even though this has 79 pages, this took me like a week to get through. It's really difficult. It's a really difficult read, and again, I would not recommend it unless you're a big Bronte fan. The most popular book that I read in the whole of Goodreads, or according to Goodreads, is The Hunger Games, and it has 6.1 million reviews, and I'm not surprised by that at all. The least popular book I read was A Death at Dawn by Gabrielle Gray. This has only 4 reviews. This is an independent book that the author sent me for free to review, and I really enjoyed it. She's African American, and the book's very cheap on Kindle. I highly recommend you all check it out. It's a fantasy book. I have a full review up. I think it's in my April wrap up, but it's very good, and I would highly recommend you check it out, especially to, you know, support independent authors and also African American authors. Please go and check that out. I'll try and remember and link her Amazon page in my description actually. I will definitely do that. So after this video, go check that out. The oldest book that I read overall was Persuasion by Jane Austen. This came out in 1818, and the newest book I've read was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which came out in 2020, obviously because that was the 100th book. And again, not surprised by this at all. I didn't realise Jane Austen was going to be the oldest, but I'm not surprised. The oldest book I've tried to read, which I actually DNF'd, was The Monk by, I feel like it's Daniel Lewis. I'm not sure. That came out in like 1700s, but I never actually finished it. I DNF'd it, so it doesn't count. The top 3 authors that I have read overall out of this 100 books was Brandon Sanderson with 8 books, C.S. Lewis with 7 books, and joint in third place with Stephanie Meyer and Rick Riordan, both with 5 books. I'm not that surprised at this. I really love Brandon Sanderson, and also, you know, C.S. Lewis, obviously the 7 books are the 7 Chronicles of Narnia, so I'm not surprised that his series was up there. Again, Rick Riordan and Stephanie Meyer as well. It's because it's a series, and when I read a series I normally binge it, so that's why they are high up there. So I'm going to squeeze right into this side of the video so I can put my pie charts here. But out of these 100 books, I read a total of 60 different authors. So the statistics for these authors are 22 of them were female and 38 of them were male, which actually took me by surprise. I thought I had read more female authors because a lot of the classics I read in my head I thought were more female, but it turns out that it's because I've read just a lot of repeats. So obviously I've read a few Jane Austens, I've read the 3 Bronte sisters, I've read multiple books by all of those. So in my head I'd read more books by women, but in reality when you break it down into just like individual authors, it turns out it's actually more books by men. I never actually checked if it would be, if you took it book by book, I feel like it would be more 50-50 then, but yeah. I'm not too upset about this. I'm not that bothered. Like, I feel like it isn't that bad a split, but obviously I do want to read more women authors and, you know, maybe get that down to a 50-50 split. So the second thing I have is the country the author was born in, and this graph is definitely an interesting one. So with the USA, we have 35 different authors, all from the USA, and then we have 16, I don't have my glasses on, 16 from England, and then the rest is very, very little. So I definitely want to change this. I definitely want to read more authors from around different countries in Europe and also different countries in Asia and Africa, and, you know, kind of expand my horizons with this a little bit. I'm quite annoyed that so many of them are, I'm not surprised that so many were from the USA or England. I wasn't surprised, but I don't love it, to be honest. What did surprise me is Russia is actually third. I have 3 different authors from Russia, so that's interesting. I was not expecting that. And then, you know, I have Germany 1, Ireland 2. This was C.S. Lewis and Oscar Wilde. Japan 1. This was just the authors of the Death Note series. Mexico 1. This is Oscar de Muriel. He writes books which are mysteries set in Scotland, which I really like. I've actually read 4 of his books, but obviously because this is by author, it almost shows up 1. And in Scotland, I really want to read more books by authors that are Scottish. This is going to be a real priority for me going forward. I'm going to try and read at least 1 book by a Scottish author every month if I can, because I really feel quite disappointed in myself that I've only read 1 Scottish author and I read 16 from England. So I definitely want to change that. Also, I just want to acknowledge a lot of these are white. Most of these authors are white, so that's something I also want to change going forward. I've already kind of started. I've already read, well, they're also from USA, but I've read White Rage already this month, and I'm currently reading The Poppy War, which is by an Asian author, although I feel like she's actually born in the USA as well, but she is an Asian author. And yeah, I definitely want to expand that and diversify my reading in that way. So the next stat is ratings, and for ratings, I have 1 unrated, and this was Emily Bronte's poems, because I just didn't feel comfortable rating a poem collection because I'm not a poem reader or fan, to be honest, so I didn't really know what I'd be rating. I really just looked at the poems on face value, and I only really bought them because it was a Bronte sister, so I didn't feel comfortable giving that a rating because I didn't really know what to rate. I have 1 book 1 star, and this was Alice by Christina Henry. If you've seen my 1000 subscriber Q&A, I went off on this book quite a few times on that, so I'm not surprised. I actually didn't realise it was the only book I gave 1 star, but, you know. 4 books have 2 stars, 25 books have 3 stars, 35 books have 4 stars, and 34 books have 5 stars. I'm surprised my 5 stars is that high. I didn't realise I gave that many books 5 stars. I feel like last year I was much more lenient and gave a lot more books 5 stars. I feel like in 2020 I gave very few 5 stars. I've started to be a little bit more harsh, which is probably why there's so many more 4 stars and 3 stars. I really struggle to give books 2 stars and 1 star because in my heart I feel like, you know, an author put a lot of hard work into this. It's like their baby, and I just don't want to give them that, even if they're dead. Even though I know you should just ignore the author's feelings. Even like literally the author could be dead for 200 years and I don't want to hurt their feelings. That's the type of person I am. But, you know, it seems like I enjoy the most books that I read, so that's pretty good. This is the big one. Okay, so genre. This was hard to define because a lot of books don't really have clear genres, and Goodreads is confusing, and a lot of classics as well. When you go into like their genre page or in Wikipedia, it just says novel, and I'm like, novel isn't a genre. So I kind of had to use my own interpretation. So for example, with contemporary, a few of these contemporaries were actually classics, but in my head I was like, well, at the time they were published, they would have been contemporaries. Coming of age is, again, I feel like this is kind of the same as contemporary, but a few books actually listed coming of age as the genre, so I put that in. Drama, again, I'm like, I don't know. Lolita I know is a drama, apparently. It's hard to really define a lot of genres for books. Obviously fantasy is my biggest, and horror and science fiction and romance are also up there. I didn't realise romance would be so up there, but I put the 4 Twilight books as romances because some places list them as fantasy and some had romance, and I was like, you know, although they're vampires, they lean more into the romance side of things than anything else, so I put them under romance. Other things like modernism, this was To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. Philosophical was Notes from Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and yeah, I don't know if this is the right place to put them, but that's what they were listed under on Goodreads, or Wikipedia, so I just kind of went along with it. I'm quite happy with my genre breakdown, to be honest. I would like to read a lot bit more diverse. I'd like to improve my horror. I really want to go into more horror books, but you know, I really enjoy fantasy. I'm not mad that it's my most popular. Next we have the type of book, and as you can see, this is a very uneven pie chart. We have 85, which are novels, 2 manga, 1 graphic novel, which was Heartstopper. Although technically I read all 3 volumes, but I only put it as 1. Short story collections, I have 5. Short stories on their own, I have 2. Poems, I have 1, that was Emily Bronte's. Plays, I have 1, that was oh my god, what's it called? Salem Witch Trials 1. The Crucible. That's Crucible. And novella, I have 4. Some of the novels, and if I was doing it myself, I would probably put them as novellas, but I just went off of how they were actually listed, because some books are listed as novellas, and then others are just short novels, so I just put a lot of them into novels, whereas I probably could have put some as novellas if I really wanted to. Year of publication, this one was interesting to me. From the 1800s to 1849, I read 10 books. From 1850 to 1899, I read 12 books. From 1900 to 1949, I only read 4. This is interesting. I thought I'd read more than that, but I guess not. This is an area I probably would like to improve. I know that, for example, Agatha Christie, her books were written during this period, so she's one author I want to read from then, but yeah, apparently I just completely skipped that 50 years, so that's interesting. 1950 to 1999, I read 30 books. I'm not surprised at that. 2000 to 2009, I read 20, and from 2010 to 2020, which is right now, I read 24. I feel like that's pretty equal between, you know, classics and now. Obviously, going up to 1999, that doesn't really count as classics, but overall, it's like a very good mixture between the new and the modern. That's the same thing. Between the modern and the classics, so I'm not that mad about it. I'm kind of less interested in classics now. I've read the majority of the ones I want to read. I'm like kind of making my way through like the final ones. So yeah, I'm not mad about that. So next we have the age category of books, and this is very uneven as well, but I'm not mad about it. I'm not interested in children's or middle grade, to be honest. And also I found this kind of hard to distinguish some. So for example, I read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and for today's standard, it's like almost adult writing. But at the time, it was sold as a children's book, but now a child, I don't think, could ever read it. So I put it under middle grade, and there was a few others like that. I kind of had to just use my judgment. But yeah, so I only read 3 children's books, 13 middle grades. This was majority just the Percy Jackson books, and I cannot remember what else I put under middle grade. I'll put some images up once I check. Young adult 19. I actually thought I'd read more young adult than this, but apparently not. And then 65 adult. So, you know, I'm not mad about that. I really would rather focus on adult and a little bit of young adult. I don't really care about children's books or middle grade books, to be honest. Next we have the page counts. So books under 100 pages, you only have 1. That was Stancliffe's Hotel. Then we have 16 that were 100 to 199, 33 that were 200 to 299, 20 that were 300 to 399, only 9 that were 400 to 499, 14 that were 500 to 599, 5 that were 600 to 699, and only 2 books that were over 700 pages, and I can't remember what the other one was, if I'm honest. I know one was obviously Breaking Dawn, but I'm not sure what the other one was. So that's interesting. I'm not mad about this. I don't really care about page count, and it's not something I really take into account when I'm choosing books, unless I'm really not in the mood for a big book. But you know, I don't purposely go for like one over the other. Format of books, I read 95 physical and 5 ebooks. Since the 100 books is ended, I've actually went more into ebooks because right now obviously the libraries are closed and I don't have a job, so I don't have income. So I've actually been relying more on ebooks this last month, just because they're cheaper. So that's definitely going to improve. Although, again, I'm not mad if it's more physical than ebook. It doesn't really affect my reading in any way. Did I own the book when I read it? 73 of them I did, and 27 I did not. This was surprising to me because obviously I feel like I use the library a lot, but apparently I own more than I realise, which is interesting. Was it a reread? So the 20 yeses are, if I can guess, the Chronicles of Narnia books, the Twilight books, the Hunger Games books. There's a couple classics I reread, like The Crucible, for example, Virgin Suicides, but the majority of books, because I didn't really read from 2014 to like 2019, the majority of books were new to me starting from 2019. And finally, were the books traditionally published or independently published? 97 of them were traditional published and only 3 were independent. This is another thing that I really want to improve on, because, you know, independent authors are just as good as traditionally published authors and they really deserve just as much praise as everyone else. And that was all the stats that I have. Also, the independent authors, if I can remember off the top of my head, were Gabrielle Gray for Death at Dawn, Savvy, I read One Final Vinyl, and I cannot remember what the third one was, but I will put up a picture right here once I remember. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, please subscribe. It's a bit different from my usual stuff. Hopefully this was interesting. I had fun making all these, but hopefully you had fun watching. So again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.